Lando takes pole as Oscar bounces back. Hamilton is in trouble of a grid penalty, and Verstappen is unhappy with the Red Bull car. Did Lewis Hamilton just throw away his Brazilian Grand Prix weekend? The seven-time world champion is now staring down the barrel of a 10-place grid penalty that could completely derail his chances at Interlagos. And it all comes down to one crucial moment during sprint qualifying that has the stewards reaching for their rulebooks. Here's what happened, and why this could be a pivotal moment in Hamilton's 2025 season with Ferrari. The drama unfolded during the second segment of sprint qualifying at the São Paulo Grand Prix, where Hamilton was fighting tooth and nail just to make it into the top 10 shootout. With the clock ticking down and every hundredth of a second mattering, Hamilton found himself in a desperate situation that would ultimately land him in hot water with race officials. The British driver was eliminated from sprint qualifying right at the death, missing out on the final segment by a razor-thin margin of just 0.07 of a second. That's less than the blink of an eye in Formula One terms. And it shows just how competitive the midfield battle has become this season. Hamilton crossed the line with the 11th fastest time, leaving him frustrated and his Ferrari team scratching their heads about their qualifying pace. But Hamilton's problems were just beginning. The incident that has now put his entire weekend in jeopardy involved his Ferrari teammate Charles Leclerc, who had his own moment of drama during the session. Leclerc was pushing hard through the technical Bico de Pato section of the Interlagos circuit when disaster struck. The Monegasque driver locked up his brakes under heavy braking, sending his red Ferrari into a spin that would trigger double-waved yellow flags across that section of track. Now, here's where things get controversial and potentially very costly for Hamilton. Race officials are alleging that Hamilton, who was running ahead of Leclerc on track at the time, failed to slow down appropriately when those double-waved yellow flags were displayed. According to the steward's investigation, Hamilton actually accelerated through the sector while it was still under yellow flag conditions. Why would Hamilton do something so risky? The answer lies in the pressure cooker atmosphere of sprint qualifying. With the session clock rapidly counting down to zero, Hamilton was incentivized to push absolutely everything to try and get across the finish line in time to set a qualifying lap. Unfortunately for the veteran driver, even with this desperate gamble, he still failed to make it to the line before time expired. The official summons from the stewards tells the whole story. Race officials have cited both the International Sporting Code and Formula One sporting regulations, specifically for failing to slow under double-waved yellow flags. This isn't a minor infringement we're talking about here. Double-waved yellows are the most serious form of caution flag, indicating immediate danger on track, and requiring drivers to significantly reduce their speed and be prepared to stop if necessary. What makes this situation even more frustrating for Hamilton is that Leclerc, despite being the cause of the yellow flags with his spin, actually managed to progress through to the final segment of sprint qualifying. The younger Ferrari driver recovered from his mistake and posted the 8th fastest time in the top 10 shootout, showing that the pace was there in the Ferrari if everything came together properly. This incident highlights a broader struggle that Ferrari has been facing at Interlagos. Both Hamilton and Leclerc have been unable to match the outright pace shown by their main competitors. McLaren has been looking particularly strong at this circuit, with Mercedes also showing impressive form. Perhaps most surprisingly, even Aston Martin has been able to find more speed than the famous Italian team, leaving Ferrari scrambling to understand their performance deficit. The penalty. Guidelines are crystal clear about what Hamilton faces if the stewards determine he violated yellow flag procedures. According to the official penalty structure issued to race stewards, a failure to slow under double-waved yellow flags carries an automatic 10-place grid penalty for the sprint race. This would be a devastating blow to Hamilton's weekend prospects, effectively ending any realistic chance he had of scoring significant points in the shorter Saturday race. This penalty threat comes at a particularly challenging time for Hamilton, who has been vocal about his concerns regarding the consistency and transparency of steward decisions in Formula One. The driver has previously criticized what he calls the secrecy surrounding steward decisions, arguing that these officials ultimately have the power to steer careers and decide championship results. Hamilton's first season with Ferrari has been anything but smooth sailing. The move from Mercedes to the Italian team was supposed to represent a fresh start and a new chapter in his illustrious career. But the reality has proven far more challenging than anticipated. The car has lacked the consistent pace needed to fight at the front of the grid, and now Hamilton finds himself dealing with potential penalties that could further hamper his ability to score points. The timing of this investigation couldn't be worse for Ferrari either. The team came into the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend hoping to capitalize on what has historically been a strong circuit for them, but instead they find themselves dealing with performance issues, and now the prospect of one of their drivers starting from the back of the sprint grid. As Hamilton awaits the steward's decision, the entire Formula One paddock will be watching closely. Will the 7-time champion receive the full 10-place penalty, or might there be mitigating circumstances that lead to a lesser punishment? Either way, this incident serves as a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes can change in Formula One, and how split-second decisions under pressure can have lasting consequences for championship aspirations. You know what happens when one of the world's most competitive drivers calls their own car broken during qualifying? Things are about to get very interesting, and that's exactly what we witnessed at Interlagos this weekend during the Brazilian Grand Prix sprint qualifying session. Max Verstappen didn't hold back his frustration, and meanwhile, we saw some absolutely electrifying performances that could shake up the entire championship picture. So buckle up, because we're diving deep into what went down during one of the most dramatic qualifying sessions of the season. Let me paint you the picture of what unfolded at one of Formula One's most iconic circuits. Interlagos is already known for producing fireworks, but this sprint qualifying session delivered drama in ways nobody expected. We had championship implications, shocking performances, and some serious speed that left everyone talking. Right from the opening moments, it was clear this wasn't going to be your typical qualifying session. The McLaren duo came out swinging, with Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri showing they meant business from the very first runs. But here's where things get interesting. While McLaren looked strong, other teams were struggling to find their rhythm in ways that would completely change the complexion of the weekend. Norris absolutely nailed his pole position lap, posting a blistering time that put him at the front of the grid for Saturday's sprint race. This wasn't just any pole position either. This was a statement drive from the championship leader, showing he's ready to take the fight directly to his rivals when it matters most. His final time of 1 minute 9.243 seconds was simply untouchable when the checkered flag waved. But let's talk about the real surprise package of the session: Kimi Antonelli in that Mercedes. The young driver secured second place on the grid, putting himself right alongside Norris on the front row. This performance came out of absolutely nowhere and showed that Mercedes might have found something special in their setup for this weekend. Antonelli's lap was smooth, confident, and exactly what Mercedes needed to inject some energy into their campaign. Oscar Piastri managed to secure third place, which might seem disappointing given McLaren's pace, but there's more to this story. The Australian driver had some moments during his qualifying runs that cost him valuable time, particularly experiencing oversteer issues that knocked him offline at crucial moments. Despite these challenges, he still managed to lock up the final podium position for the sprint grid. Now here's where the session took a dramatic turn that nobody saw coming. Max Verstappen, the 3-time world champion who's used to dominating qualifying sessions, found himself way down in 6th place. But it wasn't his grid position that grabbed headlines. It was his brutally honest assessment of his Red Bull car's performance. Verstappen didn't mince words when describing his car's behavior during the session, calling it broken and expressing genuine frustration with how the vehicle was handling. This is significant because we rarely hear such direct criticism from drivers about their own machinery, especially from someone of Verstappen's caliber. His complaints weren't just about minor setup issues. This sounded like fundamental problems with the car's balance and performance. The implications of Verstappen's struggles extend far beyond just one qualifying session. When you're fighting for championship points every weekend, starting 6th instead of 1st or 2nd can make the difference between winning and losing valuable points to your rivals. With Norris on pole position and Piastri 3rd, McLaren suddenly found themselves in a perfect position to maximize their sprint race points. George Russell managed fourth place in the other Mercedes, showing that the Silver Arrows might have found something in their recent development that's paying dividends. Russell's performance, combined with Antonelli's front-row start, suggests Mercedes could be ready to play spoiler in the championship fight between McLaren and Red Bull. Fernando Alonso delivered yet another masterclass in qualifying, securing fifth place in his Aston Martin. The veteran driver continues to extract maximum performance from his machinery, proving that experience and skill can overcome raw car performance when it counts. Alonso's consistency throughout the season has been remarkable, and his fifth-place start puts him in perfect position to capitalize on any chaos ahead of him. The session wasn't without its dramatic moments either. Charles Leclerc experienced a late spin that triggered yellow flags and disrupted several drivers' final qualifying attempts. This spin had cascading effects throughout the field, with Lewis Hamilton among those caught out by the timing and unable to improve his position when it mattered most. Speaking of Hamilton, the seven-time champion's qualifying struggles continued as he missed the cut to reach the final session by just 0.07 of a second. This was particularly painful given that Hamilton was building momentum on his final lap before the yellow flags effectively ended his chances of progression. The elimination of several big names in the earlier sessions created opportunities for some unexpected drivers to shine. The tight nature of the Interlagos circuit meant that small margins made huge differences in final positions, and several drivers found themselves eliminated despite being within tenths of advancing. What makes this qualifying session even more intriguing is how it sets up Saturday's sprint race. With Norris starting from pole position alongside the relatively inexperienced Antonelli, there's potential for some early drama as drivers jostle for position in the opening corners. Piastri will be looking to capitalize on any mistakes from the drivers ahead, while Verstappen will be charging forward from sixth, likely with improved car setup for the race. The championship implications of this qualifying session cannot be overstated. Every point matters at this stage of the season, and Norris has positioned himself perfectly to maximize his sprint race points, while his main rivals face uphill battles from lower grid positions. But perhaps the biggest storyline heading into the sprint race is whether Red Bull can solve whatever issues Verstappen was experiencing with his car. His frustration was palpable, and if those problems persist into the race, it could open the door for McLaren to extend their championship advantage in ways that seemed impossible just a few weeks ago. This qualifying session proved once again that Formula One remains unpredictable and championships can shift based on single sessions like this one at Interlagos. The Formula One silly season just got a lot less silly with one massive announcement that's reshaping the entire 2026 grid. Franco Colapinto is staying put at Alpine, and this decision is sending shockwaves through the paddock in ways you might not expect. Let me paint you the picture of what just happened. We're talking about a driver who hasn't scored a single point in 13 races this season, yet Alpine just handed him a contract extension. On paper, that sounds absolutely insane. But dig deeper, and you'll discover why this move might be the smartest gamble Alpine has made in years. Here's the thing about Colapinto that most people are missing. This Argentine sensation burst onto the scene last year with Williams, replacing Logan Sargent mid-season and immediately showing flashes of brilliance that had team principals across the grid taking notice. His raw speed was undeniable, even if the results didn't always follow. But let's address the elephant in the room. Flavio Briatore, Alpine's executive advisor, laid out 3 simple rules for Colapinto when he joined the team: be fast, don't crash, and score points. By his own admission, Colapinto broke rule number 1 right out of the gate, binning his car during qualifying at Imola. Then he struggled to deliver on rule number 3 throughout the entire season. So why on earth would Alpine keep him? The answer lies in understanding what Alpine is really buying here. They're not just securing a driver for 2026. They're making a strategic bet on potential over immediate results. And when you consider the circumstances Colapinto has been operating under, this decision starts making perfect sense. Think about his journey for a moment. Colapinto came into Alpine as a replacement driver again this year, stepping in after Jack Doohan failed to score points in his opening 6 races. That's an incredible amount of pressure for any driver, let alone someone still finding their feet in Formula One. He's essentially been in survival mode since day one, racing not just against the clock, but against his own job security. The timing of this announcement is particularly fascinating. Just days before it was made official, Colapinto was deflecting questions about his future, insisting he wanted to focus solely on the current season. He spoke about the team's struggles, their position in the championship, and how challenging it was to stay motivated when results weren't coming. That level of honesty and maturity speaks volumes about his character. Alpine team principal Briatore confirmed back in September that they weren't looking outside their driver pool, narrowing the decision down to a straight fight between Colapinto and Paul Aron. The fact that Colapinto won that battle despite his pointless streak suggests Alpine sees something in his performances that pure statistics don't capture. Now let's talk about what this means for the bigger picture. With Colapinto's confirmation, we're down to just 3 remaining seats on the 2026 grid. Red Bull and their sister team RB are the only outfits yet to finalize their lineups, which creates some incredible intrigue heading into next season. This announcement also highlights Alpine's commitment to developing young talent rather than chasing established names. Pierre Gasly brings the experience and consistency, while Colapinto represents the future and the hunger. It's a partnership that could pay massive dividends if Alpine can finally build a competitive car. The emotional aspect of this story shouldn't be overlooked either. Colapinto made this announcement in Brazil, practically on home turf given his Argentine heritage. He spoke about having fans on this journey with him and wanting to give them something to celebrate when Formula One resets next year. That connection with supporters is invaluable in modern motorsport. But here's what really excites me about this decision. Alpine is essentially doubling down on their belief that raw talent trumps immediate results. They're betting that Colapinto's struggles this year were more about circumstances than capability. It's a high-risk, high-reward strategy that could either look like genius or madness, depending on how 2026 unfolds. The psychological impact of job security cannot be understated. Colapinto has been racing with a sword hanging over his head all season. Now, with that pressure removed, we might finally see what he's truly capable of. Sometimes all a driver needs is the confidence that comes with knowing their future is secure. Looking ahead to 2026, this Alpine pairing could be the dark horse combination that surprises everyone. Gasly's experience guiding Colapinto's development, combined with the Argentine's fearless approach and natural speed, might just be the formula Alpine needs to climb back up the Constructors' Championship. The silly season may be winding down, but the real drama is just beginning. With only Red Bull and RB left to complete their 2026 rosters, expect fireworks in the coming weeks. But for now, Alpine has made their statement loud and clear. They're backing talent over statistics, potential over proven results, and the future over the past. What if I told you that 3 people sitting in a room could decide whether you become a world champion or go home empty-handed? Welcome back to the channel, where today we're diving deep into Formula One's most controversial topic that nobody talks about: the power of the FIA stewards, and why Lewis Hamilton thinks they're operating in dangerous secrecy. Picture this scenario. You're fighting for a championship. Every point matters. You make a split-second decision on track, and suddenly 3 officials you've never met before are determining your fate behind closed doors. No cameras, no transparency, no accountability. Just a verdict that could change everything. This is exactly what's happening in Formula One right now, and it's more serious than you think. Lewis Hamilton just dropped some explosive comments about the FIA stewards after receiving a controversial penalty in Mexico. But this isn't just about one penalty or one driver being upset. This goes to the very heart of fairness in motorsport's pinnacle series. Hamilton said something that should make every Formula One fan pay attention. These stewards ultimately steer careers and can decide championship results. Let me break down what actually happened in Mexico that sparked this entire controversy. During the race, Hamilton received a 10-second penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage at turn 4. Seems straightforward, right? Wrong. Here's where it gets interesting. Multiple drivers cut the first chicane during the opening laps, taking shortcuts and gaining positions, but Hamilton was the only one penalized for a track limits violation. This selective enforcement is what's driving Hamilton crazy, and honestly, it should concern all of us. When the same infringement gets different punishments depending on mysterious factors we can't see, we have a problem. Hamilton pointed out that while drivers typically get more leeway on opening laps as long as they give positions back, the inconsistency in decision-making creates confusion and frustration. But Hamilton's criticism goes way deeper than this single incident. When asked if he received any explanation from the FIA about their decision-making process, his response was telling. He said there isn't any clarity, and that's part of a bigger issue involving transparency and accountability. Most damning of all, he highlighted the secrecy surrounding how these crucial decisions get made. Think about the weight of what Hamilton is saying here. These aren't just race stewards making minor calls about blue flags or pit lane speeding. These are individuals whose decisions can fundamentally alter championship battles, end careers, and determine who gets remembered as a champion versus who becomes a footnote in racing history. Hamilton specifically mentioned that he doesn't think the stewards fully grasp the enormous responsibility they carry. Their verdicts don't just affect single race results, they cascade through entire seasons and can change the trajectory of a driver's career permanently. When you're dealing with margins this thin in Formula One, where championships are often decided by just a few points, every penalty decision becomes monumentally important. The secrecy aspect is particularly troubling. In most major sports, referees and officials face media scrutiny. They explain controversial calls, face questions about their decision-making process, and operate under public accountability. In Formula One, the stewards retreat to their private room, make decisions behind closed doors, and issue brief statements without any requirement to justify their reasoning or face follow-up questions. This system might have worked in Formula One's earlier days when the sport was smaller and less commercially significant. But today, with billions of dollars at stake and global audiences watching every move, operating in the shadows feels outdated and potentially unfair. Hamilton believes this entire system needs overhauling. And he's not wrong. The timing of these comments is also significant. Hamilton made these statements while preparing for the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend, his first race at Interlagos with Ferrari. Despite the controversy surrounding the stewards, he's focusing on extracting maximum performance from his new team. Ferrari is still hunting for their first victory of the season, and Hamilton wants to secure his first Ferrari podium in Grand Prix conditions. Hamilton acknowledged that Ferrari has made substantial progress over recent months, with his teammate Charles getting excellent results. He's optimistic about their prospects in Brazil, especially considering the track resurfacing that's created new challenges and opportunities for all teams. The unpredictable Brazilian weather could also play into their hands. But even as Hamilton looks forward to this weekend's racing, his comments about the stewards reveal deeper concerns about Formula One's governance. Structure. He's essentially arguing that the sport's integrity depends on transparent, consistent, and accountable officiating. When decisions get made in secret by officials who may not fully appreciate the consequences of their choices, everyone suffers. The solution isn't necessarily complicated, but it requires Formula One's leadership to acknowledge the problem exists. Greater transparency in decision-making processes, consistent application of penalties regardless of circumstances, and perhaps most importantly, public accountability for controversial calls would go a long way toward addressing Hamilton's concerns. What makes this situation even more fascinating is that Hamilton isn't some rookie complaining about getting penalized. He's a seven-time world champion with decades of experience who understands exactly how the sport operates. When someone with his credentials raises these concerns publicly, it carries significant weight and suggests the problems run deeper than isolated incidents. Formula One prides itself on being the pinnacle of motorsport, where the best drivers compete using the most advanced technology under intense pressure. But if the officiating system undermines that excellence through inconsistent and secretive decision-making, the sport's credibility suffers. Hamilton's willingness to speak out about these issues, even while joining a new team and trying to focus on performance, shows how seriously he views this problem. The question now becomes whether Formula One's leadership will listen to these concerns and implement meaningful changes, or whether they'll continue operating under the current system that prioritizes convenience over transparency. Based on Hamilton's comments, significant work needs to happen behind the scenes to restore confidence in the stewarding process. What do you think about Hamilton's criticism of the FIA stewards? Should Formula One implement more transparency in their decision-making process? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into Formula One's biggest controversies and stories. Ferrari fans, buckle up, because the Scuderia is about to make a massive technical gamble that could either propel them back to championship glory or leave them wondering what might have been. We're talking about Project 678, Ferrari's secret code name for their 2026 Formula One car, and the shocking suspension decision that's got the paddock buzzing. Picture this scenario for a moment. You're Ferrari. You haven't won a championship since 2008. Lewis Hamilton just joined your team with sky-high expectations, and Formula One is about to undergo its biggest technical revolution in decades. What do? Well, apparently you throw out 16 years of suspension philosophy and go back to something you abandoned way back in 2010. According to breaking reports from Italian motorsport media, Ferrari is planning to completely reverse course on their rear suspension design for 2026. They're ditching the pull rod system they've stubbornly stuck with while every other team moved away from it, and instead adopting a pushrod rear suspension layout for the first time since Fernando Alonso was driving for them. Now, this might sound like technical jargon to some of you, but trust me, this is absolutely huge news in the Formula One world. Let me break down why this matters so much and what it could mean for Ferrari's championship hopes. First, let's understand what we're dealing with here. Suspension in Formula One isn't just about making the ride comfortable for drivers. It's a critical aerodynamic and mechanical component that affects everything from how the car handles corners to how efficiently air flows underneath the chassis. The difference between pushrod and pull rod suspension comes down to where the spring and damper units are positioned and how forces are transmitted through the car. Ferrari has been practically alone in using pull rod rear suspension in recent years. Only their customer team Haas has stuck with them on this design philosophy. Every other constructor, including championship winners like Red Bull and McLaren, moved to pushrod systems years ago. This made Ferrari's stubbornness on the matter a constant source of debate among engineers and fans alike. The timing of this potential change couldn't be more significant. Formula One is introducing revolutionary new regulations for 2026 that will transform the sport completely. We're talking about 50% electrification of the power units, fully sustainable fuels, and active aerodynamics that can adjust in real time during races. These changes represent some of the biggest technical shifts in Formula One history. What's particularly fascinating is how this decision appears to be connected to personnel changes within Ferrari. The man likely overseeing this suspension revolution is Loic Serra, who joined Ferrari as their new technical director in October 2024. Serra replaced Enrico Cardile, who previously defended Ferrari's pull rod approach by claiming there were no clear performance advantages between the two systems. But here's where it gets really interesting. Cardile, who led the design of Ferrari's recent cars, has since moved to Aston Martin. His departure opened the door for Serra, whose expertise reportedly lies in vehicle dynamics, to completely rethink Ferrari's approach. It's like getting a new chef who decides to completely change the restaurant's signature dish. The shift away from ground effect regulations for 2026 appears to be a major factor in this decision. The new rules will feature smaller diffusers and different aerodynamic concepts compared to current cars. This means the suspension system needs to work in harmony with completely different airflow patterns and downforce characteristics. Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur revealed earlier this year that their 2025 car development was practically finished when Serra arrived, limiting his influence on the current chassis. This suggests that Project 678 represents Serra's first real opportunity to leave his mark on Ferrari's technical direction. The historical context makes this story even more compelling. The last Ferrari to use pushrod rear suspension was the F10 from 2010, driven by Alonso and Felipe Massa. Ironically, that was the year Alonso came closest to winning a world championship with Ferrari, missing out to Sebastian Vettel by just 4 points. Whether this suspension choice played any role in their competitiveness that season remains a subject of speculation. Recent performance data might have influenced this decision as well. Ferrari's improved results at the United States and Mexican Grand Prix, where Charles Leclerc secured podium finishes, reportedly eliminated doubts about certain technical choices for 2026. Sometimes success breeds confidence to make bold changes. Adding another layer to this technical revolution, Ferrari is simultaneously developing what Italian media describes as a revolutionary new engine for 2026. Reports suggest they're working on an aluminum alloy cylinder head with a top-secret intake system, replacing a previously planned steel solution that was abandoned due to reliability concerns. The credibility of these reports shouldn't be underestimated. Italian motorsport media has historically been remarkably accurate when predicting Ferrari's technical developments. They correctly reported Ferrari's move to pull-rod front suspension and their darker livery for 2025, as well as cockpit positioning changes, months before official announcements. This suspension change represents more than just a technical decision. It's a statement of intent from Ferrari that they're willing to completely reimagine their approach as they enter Formula One's new era. With Lewis Hamilton joining Charles Leclerc in what could be the sport's most formidable driver lineup, Ferrari clearly believes bold technical choices are necessary to end their championship drought. Whether this gamble pays off remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, Ferrari's Project 678 is already generating the kind of intrigue and anticipation that makes Formula One so captivating. Sometimes the biggest risks lead to the greatest rewards.